This activity will demonstrate the appearance of several common events and alert situations in an atom sphere process. We will be working in our activity guide, going through pages 1 through 7, so you will need that handy in order to do the exercise. In the process that we're going to work through, the start shape will read a database table and then return 4 documents. Each document is routed down a separate path and generates several alerts via different channels. So what we want to be able to see is demonstrate the appearance of several of these errors that might happen while you're executing your process and how they look in AtomSphere, and then also how to use the AtomSphere API to query the event object. So at this point, I would encourage you to pause the video and work through pages 1 through 7. And when you're finished, we can jump back in here to review together. So now in our platform, the first thing that we want to be able to do is to organize ourselves here a little bit. And underneath the ARC1 folder, I'm going to create a new folder named 2 Alerts and Events. And in here, we're going to create a new folder for Activity 1. And click Save. And we also want to load a process from the process library. So we're going to click down here at the bottom left, Browse Process Library, and search on ARC1. And we're going to load the Events and Alerts Activity 1. We'll click Install, and we'll choose the folder that we just created. And click Install. And when that's finished, we can click View Process to load that process on our canvas. So you'll see there's not much for us to configure at this point. The one thing that we will need to add is our database connection. And so at this point, we have had several processes run through, and so we'll be able to use our connections folder up here at the top to reuse the available connections. So I'll just click Configure. From here, choose in my connections folder the Boomi Training MySQL connection, click OK, and save that. So let's just take a quick look at this process before we test it and run it. The database is going to pull out 4 records for us, and then the map shape is going to map it from the database to an XML document. From there, we're going to enter the route shape, and this should be familiar from a previous exercise. We'll be checking the category value to see if it's equal to 1, 2, or 3, and then route it appropriately. So let's take a look at the notify shapes. This one is set to the level of error, and the event enable events checkbox is not checked. So that's the important distinction there. And then branch 2 also has a notify event, and this is marked as a level of warning, but it does have the checkbox marked for enable event, so that will be written to the events log. Click OK. The lookup class has a function here that also probably looks familiar. And if you edit it, you'll see that the values are numeric for several of the records, and then are letters for several of them. And so that's going to cause an error that we'll see as we run the test. And then finally, the default branch is a simple stop shape. So let's test this and see what we see. Okay, so we got an error here, an error message, and let's take a closer look at what we're dealing with here. So 3 of the documents ran through successfully, and 1 document had an error. So let's take a look at the log, and if we set it to the level of warning, we will see that we have the notify shape with the no event has written a severe error level warning. If you recall, that's what we set it at. And then we have the actual error in the map. So this is the letter A was trying to be written where it was expecting a number. So there's two errors here, one that we generated and one that was generated by the map. And this notify was not written to the event log, but this notify with a level of warning was written to the event log. All right, so we're on page 3 now. There's this note that says reminds us that to write to the event framework, the process must be deployed and executed in a production classified environment. So let's do that. We'll click on the View Deployment button and see that it's not deployed anywhere. So we'll select that and we will deploy it to our dev environment, which is the Boomi Training Cloud that is actually production level. So we'll click Save and Deploy. Can add any kind of note in there. We'll deploy it to Boomi Training Cloud. And then in Manage and Process Reporting, we can execute the process. Select the Boomi Training Cloud and then choose. Select Events and Alerts Activity 1 and click Execute. So here you'll see that it is currently running and it'll run the same way that it did in our test tab. 4 documents went in, none went out, and there were errors that were encountered. So now we know that there are errors that were written to the event log. And now we're going to build a new process that is going to use the AtomSphere API to query the event log. So let's go back to the Build tab. We're going to click on the New button. And this will be of type process, and we'll call it event query process. And we want to put it inside of our activity 1 folder and click create. So the start shape is going to be an AtomSphere API start shape, and the action will be query. Going to click the plus button to create a new connection. We'll give it the name of AtomSphere API. And then here it's filled out for us already, the WSDL URL. We only have to apply the account ID. And so the account ID is actually available in your URL. It reads account ID equals, and then copy everything after the equal sign and up to, but not including the semicolon. Copy that and paste it in, being careful to make sure that you leave the question mark WSDL at the end. Then you simply add your username and password. Click apply and save and close that. Next, we want to create our operation, so we'll click the green create button. And let's rename this AtomSphere API query. And here we're going to import from our event object. So the connection is the connection that we just created. And we'll click next here. And for the object type, we want to query the event object. We'll click next and then finish. And we're going to check return application error responses, and then save and close. And finally, OK. And then we'll simply place a stop shape at the end here. Click OK. Connect that, save this, and test it. And we're going to select the same atom that we deployed to Boomi Training Cloud. And I got 4 records returned, 4 documents returned. You should have gotten just 2. The reason I got 4 is because I ran this process just before recording, and so I actually have double what you would have. But there, you should have 2 documents in there. And if you click on the stop shape, and then the shape source data, and then on the icon to view source, we'll be able to see our errors that were generated and are written to the event log. So click on formatted document. And this first one was the error that was caught. So you can see it's a type of error. And you can see the error message itself. And the second one, when we view it, is the warning that we created with the notify shape. So this was not the error, but this was a notify shape that we said we wanted to write to the event object of a type of warning. And that is an example of being able to query the Atomsphere API to query the event object.